What's going on, everybody? It's Ricky with Videohomicide, back with another movie recommendation. This time we're going to talk about one of my fucking all-time favorites from 1966, directed by Sergio Leone. We've got none other than The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Oh my god. So I watched this movie the other night for the first time in a while, and I actually watched the extended cut. Now, the extended cut does add some texture or some context to the film, like most notably when Toyko, he goes into this cave or like this old abandoned dwelling, and he talks out loud to himself about how he's a rich man and this and that, and he talks about this gang that he once had, and then all of a sudden he says, "Oh, if I could find these guys, then I would give them each $1,000 when we get the money off Blondie." And then they all come down, and those are the guys that go into the hotel with Toyko to get Blondie. And with the Spurs, that Spurs scene, which there's two types of Spurs: it's those that come by the door and those that come by the window. Like, that's the thing about this film that I love so much. There's this thing with Toyko and Blondie where they're always talking about like how there's two types of men, whether it be the Spurs, whether it be the ones that wear the noose or do the cutting, or the ones that dig, or the ones with loaded guns. Like, there's a bunch. I feel like there's at least 5 in the film, but nonetheless, a great film, great cinematography, and just an amazing cast with Clint Eastwood as Blondie, Eli Wallach as Toyko, and Lee Van Cleef as Angel Eyes. It's this trifecta of characters, and I think that the best part about these characters is they all feel very authentic, and it's that type of character trait, or maybe not even character trait, but just characters being authentic and feeling genuine is almost like a lost art. So, and this film is in the mid 60s, and it goes to show you, like, if you compare The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly to any film from the last, like, even 25 years, there's nothing like it. There's nothing with such scope and such amazing sound and amazing score by Ennio Morricone, who of course did tons of other great sounds. He might be my favorite, right up there with Bernard Herrmann, who did the Taxi Driver music. Now, when it comes down to these 3 characters, Toyko, Blondie, and Angel Eyes, my favorite's always Toyko, mostly because I feel like he has the most... He's the biggest scumbag of all time. Like, I have this character named Filthy Ralph, who's just a total filthy son of a bitch, both, mentally and physically. And I just get the same vibes from Toyko. He's just this scumbag. He'll lie to anyone, including his own family. He'll lie to, his friends. He'll fuck over anyone. He's got a laundry list of things he's wanted for by the law, including statutory rape and fucking gambling with loaded dice and marked cards and different shit like that. He's a very cool character. One of my favorite lines of his, other than any of those, if you cross Toyko, blah, blah, like all those types of lines, and like all those 2 men type things. I love when he's being dragged into town for the first time by Blondie, and he says, "I hope your mother ends up in the $2 whorehouse." And, like, you just don't get a line like that nowadays, man. I fucking love Toyko. My favorite standalone scene with him that doesn't involve Blondie is definitely when he goes into the, I guess you'd call it a gun shop or like a pawn shop or just general store, and he fucks around with all the guns, and he like basically makes a revolver out of different pieces, and then he goes in the back. Like, Toyko's clearly a good shot. And he has this interaction with the teller where, first of all, as soon as Toyko goes into this place, he's like asking for revolvers, and the guy shows him the shittiest fucking guns, and then Tuco's like, "No, revolvers," and then he takes him to all the good ones, and that's when he builds his thing. But then the store clerk is like stupid enough to give the guy ammo, first of all, and then Toyko puts a round in the gun, points it at the guy, and says, "How much?" And the guy's like, $50, like, for the gun, and then he realizes he's being robbed, and he's like, $100, $200, like all of that. And then at the very end, when Toyko, who's like took the guy's booze like right off the get-go, gives him the booze back at the end, and then he like puts the open sign in his mouth, which just goes to show you, like, Tuco's like a son of a bitch, like he's a scoundrel, but he left the guy his booze, so he's not a total piece of shit. But nonetheless, great character and amazingly played by Eli Wallach. I wish You know, I only know one other film that he's in. It's called Aces High. I've actually never watched it, or if I've watched it, I have no recollection about it. But Tuco is definitely one of my favorite film characters in general. Like, but definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame for sure in Videohomicide's eyes. So, moving on to my least favorite character of the trio is Angel Eyes, and the only reason he's my least favorite is because he's just very much overshined by Tuco, by Clint Eastwood. Of course, Lee Van Cleef was in previous installment of the Fistful of Dollars trilogy. This is the third in the trilogy, for those that are curious, but I believe you can watch it without seeing his other films with no problem. Still enjoy it in every way. So with Angel Eyes, he's like this guy that's just a total out for himself kind of guy. Like, even more so, he's more out for himself than Tuco when it comes to money, and he's willing to like double cross as well. Like, he double crosses a guy that hires him to track down a guy right early in the beginning of the film, and Angel Eyes' best scene is that opening scene where he goes to that guy's house. He's looking for Bill Carson, and he kills the guy and kills his fucking kid, and just leaves his family there to die and takes all the money. Like, that like sets up the cold-bloodedness of it. Like, Eli Wallach's entrance is, he jumps out of a window while eating a fucking big piece of chicken, and like a big piece of chicken in one hand, gun in the other. Angel Eyes, his is that fucking moment at the house, and it like really inflicts fear, because there's definitely characters like that in real life that would, it would be almost nothing to them. Like, those that survive the likes of like the Civil War, they probably like were fucking emotionless by the end of it. So I like to think that Angel Eyes just seen a lot of shit, even though he wasn't really in, like, I don't know if he snaked his way into the position in the Union or what the fuck, how that happened. That's not really described even in the extended cut. I mean, maybe it is and I'm just totally blanking out, but definitely wish I knew more about that. And of course, Angel Eyes has that really good scene where he interrogates Tuco. First he's feeding him and all that stuff, and then Tuco has that good line where Angel Eyes asks if he wants a little music while he eats, and Tuco's like, yes, good for the digestion. I always love that. I've even said that a few times, but and of course, Angel Eyes doesn't really come back too much after that scene. But he does have one of my favorite lines is when Tuco's being about to be hung, Blondie's watching his back, and this lady's like, "Oh my God, what a disgusting person!" And Angel Eyes says to her, even a scoundrel like that has a guardian angel. And he looks over and sees Blondie, and he goes, "A golden hair angel watches over him." And it's just like a really good line, and like that little interaction he has with that fucking half soldier guy getting information, and then you hear the half soldier when he goes into the saloon, he goes, "Hand me down a whiskey." Always love that. So Lee Van Cleef, of course, has been in really good films. He was in Escape from New York. He's been in a lot of other westerny films, and I've seen him in a lot of stuff. I can't really put my finger on any titles right now, but Lee Van Cleef is definitely one of those actors that's been around. So love him, love Angel Eyes. But we're going to move on to my favorite character of the film. I mean, I might have said Tuco is my favorite character, but it bounces around. Blondie, man. Clint Eastwood as Blondie, or as the man with no name, but I like to call him Blondie. One of the coolest sons of bitches ever on the screen. Clint Eastwood plays Blondie like this badass dude that doesn't even need to say anything to prove that he's a badass, and he has all these really, good moments. Like the thing is, he doesn't really say that much in the movie. A lot of Clint Eastwood's performance in the film is through like his expression and through like what he does and stuff like that. So I love all of his interactions with him working with Tuco. Like their banter back and forth, like throughout the mountains when they're getting the money divided up and all that stuff. And then even when he leaves Tuco out in the desert to die, like that's just a cold-blooded thing, because like you're kind of like, yeah, Blondie's like the good guy of the film. And when I was a kid, I thought that. I was like, yeah, Blondie's the good guy. And they even say like the good, the bad, and the ugly, and he's supposed to be the good. And no, a good person would not leave their friend or their partner out in the middle of the fucking desert to rot. And and then when I was a kid, I felt bad for Blondie when Tuco dragged him out through the desert and stuff. But as I'm older, I'm like, yeah, you know what? Fuck that guy. He kind of deserved that shit. And you know, it's kind of bullshit. Like Blondie gets it like like other than being dragged through the you know, through the desert, he gets it pretty fucking easy in this movie. I'm not discounting being dragged through the desert because that shit looked like hell, but and I love how Tuco's like, not even the soldiers will march through there. 100 miles of sun-baked sand or some shit, and we're going there. Like, what a scumbag. Yeah, my favorite moment with Blondie is probably, probably right at the end. Like the end scene is pretty much the most iconic scene of the film, and you know, he plays like a pretty dirty trick, really, because Tuco knows the name of this graveyard where this Confederate gold is buried. Blondie knows the name of the grave, so they need each other. Of course, at one point, like I said, Tuco gets his ass kicked by Angel Eyes and his buddy, and gives up the name of the cemetery, but then escapes captivity. And him and Blondie end up meeting up again, trying to take out Angel Eyes and his little crew. But you know, that end scene with you know, Lee Van Cleef, Angel Eyes, Tuco, and Blondie, and Blondie supposedly writes down the name of the grave on this rock, and they have like this insanely tense, you know, anxiety-ridden gun battle, or like, you know, Mexican standoff. But Tuco's gun's unloaded. Angel Eyes tries to shoot Tuco, and Blondie tries to shoots Angel Eyes, and just like shoots his fucking gun into his grave, his hat into his grave, and like his foot into the grave, like total insanity. And then he makes Tuco dig up the money, and then you know, the money's split. But before Tuco can get his share, Blondie makes him go up on the grave and you know, dangles one last time, and then he lets him go. And it's like, what an asshole! Blondie's a fucking asshole, man. But still an awesome character. Like, totally love his ass, man. I think that end scene is probably one of my favorite scenes in cinema, besides the siege in Taxi Driver, when he goes to the, you know, to the building where he does his final act there. Definitely an amazing sound, like, and like just like the way it looks, everything's so wide, and there's these insane close-ups. You see like the grease on these guys' faces, you know, their eyes twitching around. One really good scene is when Tuco points the gun at Blondie's head when Blondie's like about to save Shorty, and he says, "Sorry, Shorty," but and like the gun's like that, and Eastwood's eyes like that, and then it just goes like that. Like, I always thought that was such a amazing shot for some reason. Like, there's so many good shots in this film. So I don't know, I think we got a masterpiece on our hands here. 1966 clearly was a good year for cinema. I think, I don't want to say the wrong movie. I know something else really good came out in 66, because 60s were a fucking incredible year for movies. But with that being said, I appreciate everybody for watching. Make sure you leave a 666 in the comments. And with that being said, adios.